Hey YouTube fans, it's me, the Story Man, and welcome back to my latest video. Today I'm making this is a new story for me from Chat GPT, which I created, which I call Zack and the Edge of the Stars. So remember, folks, like my video, subscribe to my channel, and please leave your comments down in the comment section below. And remember, the story may be made by Chat GPT, but the voice acting, dramatic flair, storytelling, narration, and ad-libbing were done by a real human being, for which I call myself the Story Man. Oh, and if you want what kind of story you want me to make, I will make it. Any requests, I will do so. If you want me to make a story on what you want, I will make it, and I'll give it as much life as I can. Okay, let's begin. When Zack was 12 years old, he liked standing at fences. Not because he wanted to keep people out. He wanted to know what was on the other side. He grew up on a quiet agricultural moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer regions of the Orion Reach. His world was so far from the centers of power that most galactic citizens couldn't find it on the star map chart. Fair point though, I can imagine what it's like if we can finally live in space. We do live in space, but on other planets, other worlds. I wonder why we can't do that, but I guess we're too busy killing each other to care about that. We're too busy focusing on wars instead of focusing on leaving the stars. A pity. I guess we'll never know. We'll never see it. We'll never see that day. But it'll take years. By the time then, we'll all be dead. When will we get reincarnation? That'd be kind of cool. The great governments of the galaxy, the United Stellar Assembly, the Merchant Consortium, and the Frontier Defense Pact argue constantly over trade routes, taxes, and territory. Seems nothing will change. They'll argue over something, just like what's happening right now in the world, like with Iran and the U.S. over gas. We're still going. That was sad. But none of that seemed important to Zack. He just wondered what existed beyond the last known stars. Years later, after graduating from the Academy of Navigation and Interstellar Security, Zack received the job nobody wanted, border guard. Not for a planet, not for a system, for the edge of explored space itself. Ooh, I can imagine how hard that would be. To be the border guard of that range, good God, you have to move fast. The position had only recently been created. Explorers had discovered strange gravitational corridors leading beyond every known map. Nobody knew where they went. Nobody knew what lived there. Man, I can feel like, oh, where are we going? Ah, it's space. Whoa, it's like going through a black hole. I wonder if we could use black holes as a way to go through other universes. I guess we'll never know. I can imagine how hard that would be, going through a black hole. How weird that would be. I wonder though if we can actually discover space travel, but that'll be lifetimes after we're gone. We'll never know. The governments feared war. The corporations smelled profit. Scientists demanded access. Someone had to stand at the crossing points. Someone neutral. Someone forgotten enough that nobody would accuse them of favoritism. That someone was Zack, of course. They needed a nobody, a schlub, that no one would even care, and no one would give a crap about who he is. I can imagine that. They just pick some random schlub and just pick that guy over the odds. But since this job was recently created, I can imagine how hard that would be. Whew. I wonder how we do that. Let's see how we figure this one out. This station was called Gatewatch 1. It floated along beside a shimmering rupture in the space known as the Veil Crossing. Each day, Zack inspected ships, research vessels, military patrols, mining expeditions. I can imagine how hard that would be. Smugglers pretending to be researchers. I can imagine how he had to do all that and figuring out who gets what. I can imagine how difficult that is. Whew. I can imagine how difficult that would be. Eesh. Everybody wanted though. Most days were boring, then the strangers arrived. Ooh, looks like Zack has some work for this one. They emerged from the Veil Crossing without warning. Their vessel resembled a crystal continent folded into impossible shapes. They ignored every known law of engineering. I can imagine we can make that a ship that we can't even describe. It's like a color we can't even describe either, or comprehend, or give it a name, or even know what it is. I can imagine how that would be awesome. But we'll never know. We're still here busy killing each other in our planet Earth. I wonder how we do that. How cool that would be to see space. But we're too busy killing each other to do so. For now, this story will just be a taste of what could be if we were not busy fighting monster wars. There's the station alarm screen. Military fleets across the galaxy, one alert. Red alert! Unknown vessel, prepare for battle! Armed guns. Get all the plasma rifles and as many missiles as we can launch at. I can imagine how that's how they would take it. The strangers transmitted a message. It took 3 days to decode. Imagine how hard that would be. To decode a message that they have no comprehension isn't a miracle. It's a miracle in its own way. When the translation finally appeared, it contained only 7 words. We are here because you built borders. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's hard. Nobody understood why that word. The assembly called it a threat. I wonder how could it be a threat? It just said, we are here because you built borders. I wonder how could that be a threat? I guess people see it as a threat or a message. It's just so many ways to interpret it. So many ways. It's either a threat, a greeting, a diplomatic introduction, an announcement. I guess we'll never know. The military called it an invasion. The corporates called it an opportunity. Zach called it confusing. So he did something remarkable. He asked questions. Of course, if it's something beyond you, you do something no one should do. Ask questions of something you don't have a clue what it is. Now that's something. You shouldn't be afraid to be curious. Even though it makes you look like a fool, no matter what you do. Let's see how Zach will figure out this one. Over the next several months, Zach became the first person to regularly communicate with the newcomers. Ooh, so he's the first ever human to discover alien life, and he's talking to them. They call themselves the Orelans. That's a nice word for it. Orelans. Orelans. Weird word. Kind of hard. Rolls with the tongue a bit. Their civilization had crossed multiple galaxies over millions of years. What shocked everyone was their view of politics. They had no nations, no empires, no permanent governments, no presidents, no kings, not even elections. Instead, they formed temporary governing groups that exist only long enough to solve specific problems. Like just like school group projects. This whole group schools selects only students as groups so they can figure out what to do next and how to solve the projects themselves. And that's impressive. When the problem ended, the government dissolved. Easy. To the galaxy, the idea sounded absurd. To the Orleans, permanent government sounded even stranger. They asked this question which we asked ourselves. Why keep a tool after its work is done, they asked. For a point though, the governments did what they're supposed to, but they're still there. But I guess they're there to maintain it. Let's see how they answered that one. My answer, the reason why we keep the tools after it's finished because we need them just in case. They're like it's like maintenance. We have to keep our governments need to be maintained so they're able to ensure it stays stable. Like a tool that's always on standby to fix when need be. I guess the Orleans doesn't see it that way. The debate spread across thousands of worlds. I can imagine how to debate those words. Why keep a tool after it's done? This work is done. For the first time in centuries, people began questioning assumptions that had existed since the dawn of interstellar civilization. And all because Borgar kept talking to travelers. I guess there's nothing wrong. Strange things can happen when you talk to people you don't know who they are and thinking they're just regular people. I can imagine how that would work. Imagine how extraordinary that would be. The crisis came 2 years later. A second gateway opened, then a third, then hundreds. Oh wow! Everywhere, gaze as far as you see, all coming from every civilization conceivable. I can imagine humanity how to deal with this. Like so many they have never seen, comprehending the unknown. I wonder how our civilization could fare like that. New civilizations began appearing. None followed familiar political systems. Why would they follow systems that doesn't apply to them? It only applies to us. Can it apply to a species that's different from us? How would that work? Some ruled by artificial intelligence. Some ruled by machines. Some were governed by mathematicians chosen through probability. Others allow entire ecosystems to evolve through biological networks. Galactic politics descended to chaos. Ooh, of course, this is just too weird. They have never seen this kind of politics before. I can imagine that's how ours started, when our politics started to change. This is how it all began. Old alliances fractured. Trade agreements became meaningless. No one knew how to negotiate with societies that didn't think like societies at all. That's a good point. The assembly proposed military control of every gateway. We all know our president of the U.S. who did that. It did not end well. The merchant consortium demanded private ownership. The elites trying to buy their way in. That's how our governments are. The elites always using their money. The Frontier Defense Pact threatened intervention. The Galvez stood on the brink of a conflict larger than any in history. Then Zack made the speech that changed everything. Of course, our main protagonist has a plan. Let's see how he talks his way to this one. Let's see how this works. How can you imagine that? A border guard. Representatives from thousands of the world gathered aboard the enormous diplomatic station Concord Spire. Zack wasn't a politician. He wasn't a general. He wasn't famous. He was still technically a border guard. Fair point though, he's just a border guard. His job is just to watch a border, nothing more, and to prevent foreigners from entering who enter without permits. I can imagine how that works. Let's see how he boxes me. Let's read. When he walked to the podium, many leaders barely knew who he was. He looked across the chamber and said, "Every argument in this room begins with ownership." I guess so. It's always ownership. Who owns that? Who owns that? Who owns that? It's ours. That's theirs. We own that. They own that. He owned that. It's always ownership. The delegates murmured, "You want to own the gates. Own the routes. Own the future." You want to own everything. I can imagine that's how the rich people think. They have to buy everything so they control everything. How our rich do that? The room grew quiet. But what if the future isn't territory? That's a good point though. It isn't territory. Unfortunately, our governments in the world are like that. Who owns the land? He pointed toward the stars visible beyond the station windows. He pointed like this. For centuries, we've treated borders as walls. Every civilization beyond that, beyond those gates, treat borders as meeting places. It's a good point though. He talked with people. Nobody interrupted. The unknown isn't a country to conquer. It's a conversation. You talk to it. The unknown is something we have never seen. We have never done it. The first thing when we see the unknown, we try to own it. We think it's ours. It's ours. We don't know that. Someone else might own it. We don't know who else owns that. So much though. It just kind of applies here. In our world, who owns the gas? Who owns that country? Who rules that country? Who owns that? Who owns that? It's all about ownership. I can see that's how it works. That's how our politics work. On ownership. The speech lasted only 11 minutes. Historians would study it for centuries. Within the year, the old political order began transforming. The assembly, the consortium, and the pact agreed to create something entirely new. And it's called the Intergalactic Commons. Not a bad word. Nice title. It wasn't a government. It wasn't an alliance. It wasn't even a treaty in the traditional sense. It was a continuously evolving forum where civilizations could participate without surrendering sovereignty. This is something that the United Nations should be. Instead, they're too busy bickering among themselves. Nobody knew if it would work. Nobody knew what it might become. For the first time, the future of galactic politics couldn't be predicted. The old maps no longer applied. Political scientists call the era the uncharted century. Citizens call it something simpler. The unknown territory. Fair point though, they are exploring something they have never seen. It's unknown. We have no idea. We try to own something, we have no idea what it is, who it is, or where it is. The future cannot be owned. It can only be talked about. I guess that's why Zach called it, the future is something to be owned. It's a conversation. It is. Now that is a good question. I wonder how many of our politicians ever answered that question. Years later, Zach retired. He never became president, never commanded a fleet, never ruled a planet. He was just a guy. His uniform remained the same plague gray uniform he had worn at Gate Watch 1. Yet every history book agreed on one thing. The greatest political revolution in galactic history did not begin with a ruler. No, not really. It just began with just a guy. It began with a boy who liked standing at fences. A boy who grew up wondering what existed on the other side. And when the rest of the galaxy saw borders as endings, Zach became the first intergalactic border guard to prove they could be beginnings instead. You know? And that's the story. I could imagine it could be like Zach. You see, the border in the galactic scale, we tried to own that. When we saw that, we owned that. We can't own anything. The galaxy isn't ours to own. It's to explore and to see what it is. We talk about it. That's why it's called a conversation. The future is a conversation. We don't know. And I guess that's how it is. In our world here, Zach, our world isn't like that. We just want to try to own everything. That's how our wars began. That's how the war between America and Iran had never ended truly. Just a temporary ceasefire, and they're still fighting. I just wish maybe they just see it as how Zach saw it. Just a conversation. I guess we'll never know. I guess our future is also uncertain. I don't know where you're heading, but let's hopefully we head somewhere good. We don't know if it's good or bad, but we're heading to something new. I don't know. I don't just know. All we can pray is hopefully we can just talk about it. Hopefully. And that's my video. Thank you for watching my video. This is the Story Man signing out. So remember folks, like my video, subscribe to my channel, and please leave a comment down in the comment section below. Remember, hit that like button to like this video like here. Subscribe to my channel, hit the bell for the notification to get updates from me and videos on what I uploaded. Comment down in the comment section below what kind of story you want me to make, and I will make it. And I will give it as much life as I can. Any request, I will do it. Name what kind of story you want me to make, I will make it, and I will using Chat GPT, and I'll give it as much life as possible. If you do all that, this thumb will reach the end with a thumbs up. Remember, like, comment, subscribe equals a thumbs up from me to you. Thank you and goodbye. Remember, this story may be made by Chat GPT, but the voice acting, dramatic flair, ad-libbing, storytelling, narration are all done by a real-life human being, which I call myself, the Story Man. Thank you and goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Bye.